The missing Alpha King was alive, and the woman destined to become his Luna was about to meet him as a servant. 3 months had passed since Caleb Sterling vanished in Silver Pine Forest, yet no body had ever been brought home. No final message reached the palace. No witness could explain what happened after his royal escort disappeared beneath the trees. Across the Northern Territories, people had begun lowering their voices when they spoke his name, as if a king could become a ghost simply because no one had seen him return. Caleb knew the truth was far more dangerous. He had survived, and someone inside his own government had expected him not to. Before darkness took his memory that night, he had seen one detail clearly enough to haunt him afterward: a royal council insignia on a man who should never have been there. That single image changed everything. Returning to the palace would have meant walking straight back into a trap. So Caleb did the one thing no Alpha King was ever supposed to do. He disappeared on purpose. He cut his dark hair short. He traded royal clothing for a plain gray work shirt and worn boots. Around his wrist, he wore a dark silver bracelet designed to suppress most of his alpha scent and presence. Then Caleb Sterling became Cole Mercer, a quiet laborer with no title, no family name that mattered, and no reason for powerful people to look twice at him. His last reliable clue led him 25 miles from Silver Pine to Blackridge Estate, a sprawling stone manor surrounded by pine woods, stables, servant buildings, and a high wall that made the place feel more guarded than welcoming. Caleb arrived just before sunset, carrying a small bag over one shoulder. The steward barely examined him before assigning him to the west servant quarters. That suited Caleb perfectly. Kings were watched. Servants heard everything. By the time darkness settled over Blackridge, he had already noticed which doors remained locked, which couriers arrived after regular household hours, and which workers suddenly found somewhere else to look whenever the name Damian Cross was mentioned. Caleb remembered every reaction. He trusted patterns more than people now. Then rain began to fall, soft at first, then steady enough to darken the courtyard stones. Caleb was carrying firewood toward the kitchens when he noticed a young woman kneeling beside the stable wall. An old gray wolf lay curled near her feet, shivering beneath a narrow wooden awning. The woman wore a simple brown dress, the hem damp from the rain. Chestnut hair had slipped loose from its braid and rested against her pale cheek as she wrapped a cloth around the animal with careful hands. "Audrey," the stable master called from the doorway. "Leave it. That wolf cannot work anymore." She did not look up. "It is cold." "It is useless." Audrey finally raised her eyes. Her voice stayed quiet. "Those are not the same thing." Caleb stopped beneath the covered walkway. He had spent years watching nobles perform kindness when someone important was there to witness it. This was different. Audrey had no audience she knew about. No reward waited for her. Helping the old wolf would only delay her other work and probably earn another complaint. Still, she stayed. She adjusted the cloth, placed one hand gently against the animal's side, and murmured until its breathing grew calmer. Something inside Caleb shifted. His own wolf had been strangely distant since Silver Pine, as if the betrayal had driven even that part of him into silence. Now it stirred. Caleb tightened his grip on the firewood. He told himself it meant nothing. Then Audrey looked up. Hazel green eyes found him across the rain-dark courtyard. For one suspended moment, the estate seemed to go quiet around them. Audrey saw Cole Mercer, another servant in worn clothes, standing where servants belonged. Caleb saw an omega everyone else had learned to overlook. And somewhere beneath the bracelet, beneath the disguise, beneath every layer of caution he had built around himself, his wolf became completely still. Then it gave him one clear instinct. Her. Caleb looked away first, disturbed by the force of it. He had come to Blackridge to uncover a traitor, not to chase some unexplained pull toward an omega stranger. But as he started toward the kitchen again, Audrey called softly behind him. "Cole!" Caleb froze. He had never told her his name. Caleb froze, with the firewood still in his arms. Audrey remained beside the old wolf, one hand resting lightly against its gray coat. "How do you know my name?" he asked. She tilted her head toward the servant wing. The steward shouted it twice when you arrived. You were carrying a bag that looked heavier than everything you own. A faint smile touched her face. Cole Mercer is not difficult to remember. Caleb studied her for another second, then continued toward the kitchen. He had spent too many years around people who hid questions behind compliments. Audrey sounded different. That did not mean she was harmless. By sunrise the next morning, Blackridge Estate was already moving. Kitchen doors opened, stable hands crossed the yard with buckets, wagons rolled toward the southern road. Caleb spent the early hours repairing a damaged storage door near the west wing, exactly where he had requested to work. From there, he could watch the servants, the couriers, and the locked records room without appearing interested in any of them. Audrey passed him twice carrying folded linens. The first time, she barely glanced his way. The second time, she stopped. Your side is bothering you. Caleb kept his eyes on the hinge beneath his hand. My side is fine. Then you are very protective of something that does not hurt. His hand had been resting near the scar beneath his right ribs without him realizing it. Caleb lowered it. You watch people closely. People tell you plenty when they think you are not important enough to notice. The words landed harder than she intended. Caleb looked at her properly. Audrey seemed to realize what she had said and turned toward the laundry room. Wait, she paused. He expected another question. Instead, she pulled a narrow roll of clean cloth from the basket and held it out. The edge of your shirt is stained. Caleb looked down. A small dark mark had appeared where the old wound had opened under the morning strain. Not dangerous, annoying, and visible. He took the cloth. How did you see that from across the hall? I did not. Audrey nodded toward his face. You stopped breathing normally every time you lifted your right arm. Caleb said nothing. Her expression softened, but there was no pity in it. You should wrap it before someone less polite starts asking questions. Then she walked away. Caleb watched her disappear around the corner. She had noticed too much. That alone should have put her higher on his list of suspects. Instead, he found himself thinking about the way she had protected his secret, without demanding an explanation. That evening, Caleb waited until the west corridor emptied. The records room remained locked, but the estate clerk had carelessly left the key ring hanging inside the nearby accounting office. Caleb borrowed it for less than 2 minutes, long enough. Inside, shelves covered 3 walls, shipping records, household accounts, courier logs. Nothing unusual at first. Then he found a narrow drawer marked Private Correspondence. Most letters carried trade seals or local pack marks. One envelope was different. Black wax, a silver cross pressed into the center. Damien Cross. Caleb opened it carefully. The message was short. Continue searching. The king's body must be found. Do not assume silence means death. Caleb read the line twice, so Damien knew enough to be afraid. He slipped the letter beneath his shirt, then noticed one final line written at the bottom, in a different hand, a separate instruction. Find the woman connected to the old records. Confirm what she knows before she disappears again. Caleb's pulse slowed. Beneath that sentence was a name. Audrey Collins. Caleb read Audrey Collins' name one more time before folding Damien's letter and slipping it beneath his shirt. By morning, suspicion had settled into something colder. Questions. Why would the Royal Chancellor care about an Omega servant at Blackridge? What old records was Damien searching for? And why did Audrey seem so practiced at noticing things everyone else missed? Caleb decided not to confront her. Not yet. People revealed more when they believed they were being ignored. So through the next day, he watched. Audrey carried breakfast trays before sunrise, organized medicines in the supply room, and repaired a torn coat for an elderly groundskeeper during the few minutes she should have spent resting. She did nothing dramatic. That was what bothered Caleb most. Kindness this consistent was difficult to fake. Near noon, he tested her without letting her know there was a test. He left a small silver coin beneath a bench outside the laundry room, then continued stacking wood nearby. Audrey found it within minutes. She looked around, picked it up, and carried it straight to the kitchen supervisor. Someone dropped this. The supervisor barely glanced at her. Keep it. Audrey placed the coin beside the account book anyway. It is not mine. Caleb lowered his gaze before she could catch him watching. A traitor could return a coin. A spy could help an injured animal. None of it proved innocence. He reminded himself of that twice. Then came the afternoon delivery. A young kitchen boy named Thomas was carrying folded tablecloths through the central courtyard when a visiting noble complained that the boy had blocked his path. Thomas apologized immediately, but the man kept humiliating him, loud enough for half the courtyard to hear. Perhaps servants at Blackridge have forgotten their place. Caleb felt the old instinct rise inside him. Not the wolf, the king. He stepped forward before caution could stop him. He apologized. The noble turned. Did someone ask you? Caleb held his expression still. No, sir. Then learn from the boy and stay quiet. Thomas stared at the ground, face burning with embarrassment. Caleb should have stopped there. A servant would have. Instead, he said, respect does not become more valuable because someone with less power is denied it. Silence spread across the courtyard. The estate steward appeared almost immediately. His face tightened when he saw Caleb. Cole, kneel until evening bell. Caleb could have refused. He could have ended the entire disguise with one breath of alpha authority. Instead, he walked to the edge of the courtyard and lowered himself onto one knee. It was a small humiliation. He had endured worse in council chambers while wearing a crown. Still, something about kneeling while men who would have bowed to him yesterday walked past without a glance felt strangely clarifying. This was how the world looked from below. A few minutes passed, then footsteps stopped beside him. Audrey. Caleb looked up. You should keep walking. She lowered herself onto one knee beside him. Caleb frowned. What are you doing? Waiting for the evening bell. You were not punished. I know. Then why are you kneeling? Audrey looked ahead, not at him. Because nobody should have to be made small alone. The answer hit somewhere Caleb had no defense prepared for. You could get in trouble. Probably. That does not bother you? It bothers me less than pretending I did not see what happened. For several seconds, Caleb forgot Damien's letter, forgot Blackridge, forgot the throne waiting somewhere beyond these walls. He saw only Audrey kneeling beside a man she believed had nothing to offer her. No title, no protection, no future worth borrowing. When the bell finally rang, Audrey stood first and offered him her hand. Caleb looked at it, then at her. You trust strangers too easily. Her expression changed, just slightly. No. She waited until he took her hand. I just know what it feels like when powerful people decide someone does not matter. Then she walked away. Caleb remained where he was for another moment, Damien's stolen letters suddenly heavy against his chest. The Chancellor was searching for Audrey Collins. Caleb had assumed that made her dangerous. Now another possibility felt far more likely. Maybe Audrey was not part of Damien's secret. Maybe she was the secret Damien was afraid someone would uncover. By the next afternoon, Audrey had stopped believing Cole Mercer was ordinary. Blackridge Estate was preparing for a private gathering, and every servant had been ordered to move twice as fast and speak half as much. Carriages rolled through the southern gate, noble guests filled the main hall, music drifted through the stone corridors while trays of food moved from the kitchens toward rooms Audrey was rarely allowed to enter. She spent most of the evening carrying fresh linens and checking the medicine cabinet near the West Hall. Cole worked nearby, moving crates from the storage wing. He looked like a servant, he dressed like one, he even kept his eyes lowered when important guests passed. But Audrey had started noticing the moments when he forgot to pretend. The way he checked every doorway before entering a room. The way he always positioned himself where he could see both exits. The way his shoulders changed whenever someone raised their voice behind him. Those were not habits learned from carrying firewood. Near sunset, Audrey stepped into a narrow corridor connecting the dining hall to the servants' stairwell. 3 visiting guards stood near the doorway, laughing too loudly. One of them moved aside when she approached, but the others did not.
You work here?
one asked. Yes. Audrey kept her tone polite.
Then bring us something better than the wine they served upstairs.
The kitchen is preparing dinner. Someone will bring it shortly. The tallest man smiled without warmth.
We asked you.
Audrey felt the familiar pressure settle over the moment. Not danger exactly. Power. The kind that expected obedience simply because it could. I have another assignment. She tried to step past them. One guard shifted into her path. That can wait. Before Audrey could answer, a calm voice came from behind them. She said she has work to do. Cole stood at the far end of the corridor, carrying an empty wooden crate. The guards turned. Audrey's stomach tightened. After what happened the day before, he should have known better than to challenge anyone again. Cole, she said quietly. It is fine. His eyes met hers for half a second. No, it is not. The tallest guard laughed.
Another servant who forgot his place.
Cole set the crate down, slowly, carefully. Nothing about the movement looked threatening, yet the air around him seemed to change. One guard stepped closer and tried to block him. Cole moved once. That was all Audrey understood. He shifted his weight, turned his shoulder, and suddenly the man who had been standing in front of him was several feet away, off balance, but unharmed. A second guard reached toward Cole. Cole caught the motion before it finished, redirected the man's arm, and stepped between Audrey and all three of them without striking anyone. It happened so cleanly that the corridor went silent. Even the guards looked confused. Cole's voice remained level. The lady is leaving. Lady? Nobody at Blackridge called Audrey that. The tallest guard stared at him, reconsidering whatever he had planned to say. Then footsteps sounded from the dining hall, and the three men backed away with irritated expressions. Not worth the trouble, one muttered. They left. Audrey stayed still. Cole picked up the crate as if nothing unusual had happened. You should return to the West Hall. Who taught you that? He paused. That? The way you moved. Old habit. From where? A long story. Audrey stepped closer. Servants do not stand like that. Cole's jaw tightened. You study servants often? I study people who pretend badly. For the first time, she saw him lose control of his expression, only for a second, surprise. Then it vanished. Audrey lowered her voice. Yesterday, you talked like someone used to giving orders. Today, you moved like someone trained to protect important people. His eyes became unreadable. Maybe I had an interesting life before Blackridge. Maybe. She looked at the dark silver bracelet around his wrist. She had noticed it before. Now she wondered why he never removed it. Or maybe Cole Mercer is not your real name. Caleb felt the old wound beneath his ribs pull as he lifted the crate again, but he ignored it. Be careful, Audrey. Questions can attract attention. She held his gaze. So can pretending to be someone you are not. Then she walked away, but not toward the West Hall. For the first time since he arrived, Caleb realized Audrey was no longer simply watching him. She was beginning to investigate him. Audrey waited until Blackridge had gone quiet. The last carriage left shortly after midnight, and the servants' wing settled into the kind of silence that only came after a long day of pretending everything was normal. Caleb did not sleep. From the narrow window of his room, he saw Audrey cross the western courtyard wearing a dark cloak over her work dress. She moved carefully, keeping close to the stone wall before slipping through the small gate near the supply buildings. Caleb watched for 3 seconds. Then he followed. The forest beyond Blackridge was damp from the earlier rain. Moonlight caught on wet branches and turned the path silver in places. Audrey kept a steady pace, never looking back. Caleb stayed far enough behind that even a cautious person would hear only the wind in the trees. After nearly a mile, the path opened onto the remains of an old moon temple. Half the roof had collapsed years ago. Ivy covered the stone columns. No lamps burned inside. Audrey entered anyway. Caleb waited near the doorway until he heard stone scrape softly against stone. When he stepped inside, Audrey was gone. He crossed the cracked floor and found the altar at the far end. One corner had shifted. Beneath it, a narrow stairway descended into darkness. Caleb's suspicion sharpened. People did not discover hidden rooms by accident. He moved down the steps and found a small underground chamber lit by one oil lamp. Audrey stood beside a stone shelf with her back to him. On the wall behind her was a faded crescent symbol he did not recognize. She opened a wooden box and removed something wrapped in cloth. Caleb took one silent step closer. Audrey unfolded the cloth. His breath stopped. Resting in her palm was a heavy silver signet ring bearing the royal wolf of House Sterling. His ring. The one that had vanished the night of Silverpine. The ring no one should have possessed except the person who found him after the ambush, or someone connected to the people hunting him. Every moment with Audrey rearranged itself in his mind. Her attention to his injury, her strange calm, Damien's letter, the search for old records, her name written beneath the order. Caleb stepped out of the shadows. "Where did you get that?" Audrey turned so quickly the cloth slipped from her fingers. The ring remained in her hand. For the first time since he had met her, real fear crossed her face. Not guilt, fear. "Cole!" "Do not." His voice stayed low, but the servant disappeared from it. "I asked you a question." Audrey stared at him, then at the bracelet on his wrist. "You followed me." "Where did you get the ring?" She closed her fingers around it. "I can explain." "Then explain." Caleb moved into the lamplight. He did not threaten her. He did not need to. The room was small, the silence between them smaller. Audrey's breathing changed. Caleb noticed because he had learned to notice everything about her. "That ring belonged to the king," he said. "Everyone knows that. Not everyone knows it disappeared with him." Audrey said nothing. "Damien Cross is searching for you. You keep hidden records beneath an abandoned temple. And now I find you holding something taken from the night the king vanished." Her eyes lifted to his. "You found Damien's letter." Caleb went still. That was not a question. "How do you know about the letter?" Audrey's grip loosened slightly around the ring. "Because this place has been watched longer than you realize." "By whom?" "People who are afraid of the same truth you are trying to find." Caleb took another step. "You do not know what I am trying to find." Audrey looked at him for a long moment. Then her gaze dropped to the way he stood, the controlled stillness, the bracelet he never removed, the old injury beneath his shirt. When she looked up again, the fear in her face had changed into certainty. "I did not know when you first arrived," she said softly. "Not for certain." Caleb felt the room tighten around him. Audrey placed the royal ring on the stone shelf between them. Then she lowered her head, not like a servant obeying an order, but like someone acknowledging a truth she could no longer pretend not to see. "Your Majesty." Caleb did not answer at first. The words, "Your Majesty," seemed too large for the small underground chamber. Audrey stood across from him with the royal signet resting between them, and for the first time since Silverpine, Caleb felt as if the past had finally caught up with him. "Start from the beginning," he said. Audrey nodded slowly. 3 months ago, I was gathering fever leaf near the northern stream. I heard horses farther up the trail, then voices. I stayed hidden until everything went quiet. Her eyes dropped to the ring. That was when I found you. Caleb's expression hardened, but he did not interrupt. You were unconscious, your clothes were torn, and there was blood on your side. I did not know who you were at first. She touched the edge of the stone shelf. Then I saw the ring. Caleb looked at the silver crest. Pieces of memory stirred. Cold water, pine needles, a woman's voice telling someone to keep breathing. He had always assumed those fragments belonged to a dream. You knew I was the king. I knew enough to understand that whoever had done this might still be nearby. Audrey took a breath. I removed the ring because it identified you. I wrapped your injury, I used creek water and crushed pine to break the scent trail. When I heard men searching along the ridge, I led them toward the old hunting road. Caleb watched her carefully. And when you came back? You were gone. Mason found me. The name slipped out before he could stop it. Audrey's eyes sharpened. Captain Reed? Caleb gave a small nod. He was close enough to reach me after you left. Audrey seemed to release a breath she had been holding for 3 months. Then you did survive because someone found you. I survived because you kept them from finding me first. Silence filled the chamber. Caleb had spent weeks trying to remember who had helped him. Now she was standing 3 feet away. The woman he had suspected. The woman Damien Cross was trying to find. Why did you keep the ring? He asked. Audrey looked toward the faded crescent carved into the wall. Because I knew the attack was not random. She reached beneath the stone shelf and removed a thin wooden case. Inside lay several folded papers and a narrow strip of metal engraved with tiny symbols. My mother left this to me. It is a cipher key. Caleb stepped closer. For what? Old Silver Moon records. She unfolded one of the papers. Rows of numbers, initials, and trademarks covered the page. For months, Blackridge has been moving supplies through accounts that do not make sense. Horses, silver suppressants, weapons, courier payments. Most of it looked ordinary until I used the old cipher. Caleb's eyes moved across the page. And then? Audrey placed another sheet beside it. Then the names appeared. Caleb recognized 2 of them immediately. Men who had served routes near Silverpine before the attack. A third name belonged to a council courier Damien often used. These payments were made before the ambush, Caleb said. Yes. Audrey pointed to a coded mark at the bottom, and this same symbol appears in records from 20 years ago. Caleb looked at her. What happened 20 years ago? Audrey's face changed. Fear returned, but this time it was mixed with resolve. That is the part I have never told anyone. Caleb wanted to press her, but Dawn was not far away. If Damien was searching for both of them, they needed more than truth. They needed time. Stay here until first light, Caleb said. Where are you going? To make sure someone I trust knows where to find me. Less than an hour later, Caleb reached the abandoned hunter trail south of Blackridge. Beneath a low stone cairn, he placed a coded metal token Mason would recognize. Emergency, Blackridge. Come prepared. Caleb covered the cairn and turned back toward the estate. Then he saw fresh hoofprints cutting across the muddy road. Too many for a normal courier, all heading toward Blackridge. And in the distance, beyond the trees, the first black carriage appeared. Caleb did not wait for the carriage to reach Blackridge. He turned from the hunter trail and moved quickly through the trees, keeping the estate wall between himself and the road. By the time he reached the Moon Temple again, the sky had begun to pale. Audrey was exactly where he had left her, standing beside the stone shelf with the old records spread before her. She looked up the moment he entered. Someone is coming. Caleb closed the hidden entrance behind him. More than someone. Several riders, a black carriage. They are heading straight for Blackridge. Audrey went still. Damien. You were certain? No one else uses that carriage seal. She began gathering the papers, but Caleb caught the fear in her hands before she hid it. You said there was something you had never told anyone. Audrey stopped. For a moment, she seemed to argue with herself. Then she reached beneath her collar and pulled the fabric slightly away from her left shoulder. A pale, crescent-shaped mark rested against her skin. Caleb recognized the symbol at once. It matched the carving on the temple wall. Silver Moon, he said. Audrey nodded. My mother was Evelyn Silver. Caleb stared at her. The name belonged to a family the history books called traitors. A Luna bloodline erased 2 decades ago. That line ended 20 years ago. That is what the Royal Council wanted everyone to believe. Audrey lowered the fabric again. My mother escaped. She changed her name. She raised me as Audrey Collins and taught me never to tell anyone where I came from. Caleb looked at the records. Because the purge was false. Because the purge was planned. Audrey opened an older document and placed the cipher key beside it. These codes appear in the accounts from that time. The same network moved money, supplies, and messengers before my family was accused. The Cross family was involved then, too. Caleb felt the pieces settle into place. Damien was not protecting one recent crime. He was protecting a system his family had inherited.
And you've been collecting proof ever since.
For years. Audrey's voice softened. I thought if I stayed invisible long enough, I could survive until the truth was complete. Caleb looked at her, remembering the woman kneeling beside an old wolf while everyone else walked past. Invisible. That was what Blackridge had made her. That was what she had allowed them to believe. Damien is not searching for an Omega servant, Caleb said. He is searching for the last Silver Moon heir. Audrey met his eyes. Yes. The word carried no pride, only exhaustion. Caleb understood then why his wolf had reacted to her before his mind could explain anything. It was not rank, not a title, not even the old bloodline. It was her, the woman beneath all of it. A distant bell suddenly rang from Blackridge. Once, twice, then again. Audrey turned toward the ceiling. That is the estate lockdown bell. Caleb gathered the recent records and handed her the old archive.
We leave by the west path.
Stay close. They reached the edge of the forest minutes later, but the estate had already changed. Riders stood at the south gate. Servants were being ordered into the main courtyard. The black carriage rested near the manor steps. Caleb saw Damien Cross step out, calm and perfectly dressed, as if he had arrived for breakfast rather than a search. Audrey whispered, "He knows."
Not everything.
Caleb touched the bracelet at his wrist.
And he does not know who I am.
They moved toward the old service entrance, but a familiar voice called Audrey's name from behind them. The Blackridge steward stood with 2 estate guards. His face was pale.
Miss Collins, Chancellor Cross requires your presence.
Caleb stepped forward. Audrey caught his sleeve. Not yet, she whispered. If you reveal yourself now, we lose the chance to learn what he knows. Before Caleb could answer, Audrey released him and walked toward the guards on her own. Damien was waiting in the courtyard. When he saw her, he smiled. Audrey Collins, he said. Or should I call you by the name your mother died protecting? Caleb went completely still. Damien knew about Silver Moon, and Audrey had just walked into his hands. Damien Cross did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The entire Blackridge courtyard had gone silent around him. Audrey stood 10 feet away, surrounded by servants who had spent years looking through her as if she were part of the furniture. Now every eye was fixed on her. Audrey Silver, Damien said again. The last surviving daughter of a family that should have disappeared 20 years ago. Audrey kept her shoulders straight. My name is Audrey Collins. Damien smiled. For now. Caleb remained beneath the covered walkway, dressed in Cole Mercer's plain servant clothes, every instinct telling him to step forward. He forced himself to wait. Audrey had been right. Damien believed he controlled the moment. That confidence might make him careless. You have been taking records from this estate, Damien continued. Records that do not belong to you. Records of payments made before the king vanished. A murmur moved through the courtyard. Damien's expression barely changed. A servant reading numbers she does not understand. Audrey reached inside her cloak. Caleb tensed, but she only produced 1 folded sheet. Then explain them. Damien's eyes dropped to the page, just for a second. It was enough. Caleb saw recognition. So did Audrey. You know exactly what these are, she said. Damien's calm finally thinned. Give me the documents. No. 2 guards moved toward her. Caleb stepped out from the walkway. She said no. Damien turned slowly. His gaze passed over Caleb without recognition. Who are you? A servant. Then remember what that means. Caleb almost smiled. For 3 months he had imagined the moment he would face the person behind the conspiracy. He had expected anger. Instead, he felt strangely calm. I have learned more about power while wearing this shirt than I ever learned from men who thought titles made them important. Damien studied him more closely. "Take him inside." The guards hesitated. Something in Caleb's posture had changed. Audrey saw it immediately. "Cole," she said softly, a warning. "Not yet." Caleb looked at her. He understood what she was asking. Preserve the disguise. Preserve the investigation. Wait for Mason. It was the smarter choice. Then Damien reached for the records in Audrey's hand and ordered, "Confine her until she tells me where the rest are hidden." Caleb made his decision. "No." Damien turned back. "You are becoming tiresome." Caleb lifted his left hand and slowly unfastened the dark silver bracelet from his wrist. Audrey's breath caught. The moment the metal left his skin, the courtyard changed. His suppressed alpha presence returned like a pressure no one could mistake. Conversations died. Several wolves instinctively lowered their eyes. One guard stepped back before realizing he had moved. Damien's face emptied of color. Caleb let the bracelet fall into his palm. "Look at me again," he said. Damien stared. Recognition came slowly, then all at once. "That is impossible." Caleb walked into the center of the courtyard. No limp, no lowered gaze, no servant left in the way he carried himself. "You spent 3 months searching for a dead king." His gray-blue eyes never left Damien's. "You should have paid more attention to the people you believed were beneath you." Somewhere beyond the southern gate came the sound of approaching horses. Damien looked toward it. Caleb did not. He already knew who was coming. Mason Reed entered the courtyard moments later with a small group of loyal royal guards. His eyes found Caleb first, then Audrey, then Damien. Mason lowered his head. "Your Majesty." The courtyard erupted in shocked whispers. Audrey remained silent, staring at Caleb as if seeing both men at once. Cole, who had shared her work and stood beside her when no one else did. Caleb Sterling, the king every pack believed was gone. Damien slowly looked around and realized no one was obeying him anymore. Caleb turned toward Audrey. His wolf stirred again, stronger now, but Caleb did not speak the word forming inside him. Not yet, because before he could ask Audrey to stand beside his throne, the entire kingdom would have to hear what she had spent her life hiding. 3 days later, the royal tribunal chamber was full before sunrise. Pack leaders, council members, servants from Blackridge, and families connected to the old Silver Moon line filled every seat. Caleb stood at the front in royal black once again, but the room felt different now. The crown had returned to him, yet he understood more clearly than ever that power meant very little without truth beneath it. Audrey stood several feet away, holding the same record she had protected in silence for years. No servant dress, no lowered eyes, no attempt to disappear. Mason had spent the previous days securing the documents from Blackridge, verifying courier records, and confirming the payment trail. The evidence formed a chain that reached from the Silver Moon Purge 20 years earlier to the preparations made before Caleb disappeared in Silver Pine Forest. Damien Cross sat before the tribunal while each record was read aloud. He denied the accusations at first, then witnesses confirmed the coded payments. Blackridge clerks identified the accounts. Royal couriers admitted they had received sealed instructions through Damien's office. The final blow came from the cipher Audrey's mother had preserved. The same symbols used to hide the old purge had been used again to conceal the movement of horses, suppressants, and money before Caleb vanished. There was no dramatic confession. There did not need to be. The truth was already sitting in front of everyone. By sunset, the tribunal stripped Damien of his office and convicted him of treason, conspiracy, and falsifying royal records. The remaining conspirators were removed from authority and placed under lawful judgment. Caleb did not celebrate. Audrey did not either. Some victories were too heavy for cheering. The next morning, the council publicly cleared the Silver Moon family name. Evelyn Silver was no longer listed as a traitor. Audrey stood beneath the restored family crest while an official read the declaration. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then she touched the crescent mark near her shoulder through the fabric of her dress and closed her eyes. Her mother had spent a lifetime hiding that name. Audrey finally heard it spoken with honor. On the following day, Caleb formally resumed the throne before representatives from every major pack. When the ceremony ended, he asked Audrey to remain in the royal courtyard. A silver lunar crown rested on a small table between them. Hundreds watched in silence. Caleb did not pick it up. "The mate bond may have recognized you before either of us understood it," he said. "Your bloodline may give history a reason to expect you beside this throne, but history does not get to choose your life." Audrey looked at him. Caleb continued, "If you leave today, you leave free. If you stay, you will never stand behind me. You will stand beside me." The courtyard remained still. Audrey looked at the crown, then at the man who had entered Blackridge in worn boots and carried firewood through the rain. She remembered the servant who had defended a kitchen boy, knelt without using his power, and listened when everyone else ignored her. Then she lifted the Luna crown with both hands. Caleb did not move to help. He understood that this moment belonged to her. Audrey placed the crown on her own head. "I am not choosing this because fate told me to," she said. "I am choosing the man who proved who he was before I knew his name." Caleb held out his hand. Audrey took it. The pack leaders lowered their heads, not because an Omega had been elevated by a king, but because the woman they once would have overlooked now stood there by her own choice. Caleb had returned to his kingdom. Audrey had reclaimed her family, and neither of them needed to become someone else to deserve the place they finally held. Maybe that is the real lesson here. Strength is not proven by rank, fear, or control. It is proven by how we treat people when there is nothing to gain. I believe Audrey chose wisely. What would you have done in her place? Share your thoughts below and subscribe for more stories where courage, dignity, and choice still matter.